There's a particular kind of Monday morning where you're dragging yourself out the door and a thought creeps in. Is this really it? 10 more years of this? Most people never really answer that question. They just pick an age when it's just enough. 65, maybe 60, whatever sounds right, and then they cross their fingers. But we all know that hope isn't a plan. And getting this wrong in either direction can be really expensive. You could retire too early and discover later that the money has to stretch further than you expected, or you work years longer than you needed to. Hi, I'm Stefano Francesca, certified financial planner, professional, and senior wealth advisor at Next Step Wealth Management with IPC Securities Corporation. I spend much of my working life helping people answer exactly these questions. How long, how much, and what if? And the answers often look different once we actually run your numbers. Today, I'll show you how to start finding your answers. Here's the standard approach, and it's obviously oversimplified. Pick 65 because that's the default. You estimate your expenses, you multiply that by 25 years, and if the total looks covered, you're good. One big problem, that's an incomplete picture. It doesn't properly account for taxes, inflation, when CPP and OAS begin, how your spending may change throughout your retirement, or which accounts you'll actually draw from along the way. It treats retirement like a single equation instead of a system where every piece can affect the other. Let me show you how different the answer can look with a hypothetical example. Let's take Mark and Susan. Mark is 58, Susan is 56, and together they have roughly $900,000 saved between their RRSPs and TFSAs, plus CPP and OAS down the road. Mark wants to retire at 60. A basic online calculator might tell them it's tight, but potentially doable. But once you start looking at taxes, benefit timing, withdrawal order, and how their different accounts interact, the picture can change considerably. For example, simply preserving their RRSPs for as long as possible might keep their taxes lower initially. But that could also leave more money growing inside fully taxable retirement accounts for later, when CPP, OAS, and eventually mandatory RRIF withdrawals may be adding to their taxable income. On the other hand, withdrawing heavily from the RRSP immediately and prepaying tax isn't automatically the answer either. The point is that the order matters. How much they withdraw, when they withdraw it, when CPP begins, when OAS begins, and which accounts they use to fund their lifestyle. A calculator that looks only at the account balance and annual spending can miss those interactions entirely. If you're wondering whether your own retirement date is built on assumptions that haven't been tested yet, that's exactly the kind of analysis we do with our clients at Next Step Wealth Management. Scan the QR code on the screen or press the link below to book a time with me. Now, forget about the retirement age just for a second. There are three things I'd want to understand first. And the first one trips up a lot of people. Firstly, what do you actually spend? Not what you think you spend. Not what your salary is, what actually leaves the household. Track it for 3 months. Your housing, your food, travel, insurance, vehicles, subscriptions. Then track the expenses that don't happen every month, like home repairs or helping family. Then build some room for the things you didn't anticipate and consider what new expenses you'll take on. Because your retirement plan doesn't need to replace your salary. It needs to support your lifestyle. And that's an important distinction. Next, look at your income floor. CPP, OAS, a pension if you have one, other reliable sources of income. If you expect to spend $80,000 per year and eventually receive $45,000 from CPP, OAS, and a pension, your portfolio isn't necessarily responsible for the entire $80,000 forever. It needs to only fund the gap. And that gap can change considerably depending upon your age. Which brings us to the third piece. How do you use the years between when you stop working and when other income sources begin? For many retirees, those can be some of the lowest tax years of retirement. Suppose you retire at 60, but decide to delay CPP. Your employment income is disappeared. CPP hasn't started yet. OAS doesn't begin before age 65, and mandatory RRIF withdrawals are still years away. That could create a period where you have more control over how much taxable income you recognize. And that's where withdrawal planning becomes particularly interesting. You may have an opportunity to make deliberate RRSP withdrawals during those early years, rather than automatically preserving every dollar until later. You pay the resulting tax, and if you have available TFSA contribution room, some of the remaining after-tax funds could potentially be contributed there. The goal isn't simply to empty the RRSP early. And it isn't to preserve it for as long as possible. It's to determine whether recognizing some taxable income earlier can improve the overall retirement plan and whether that prepayment of tax is actually worthwhile. Now let's apply that framework to Mark and Susan. One potential strategy could have Mark retire at 60 while Susan continues working part-time for another 2 more years. Her income helps cover part of their lifestyle, reducing how much they immediately need from their investments. During that period, they could evaluate deliberate RRSP withdrawals based on their tax situation each year. Some of the after-tax proceeds could potentially be contributed to their TFSAs if they have available contribution room. Then, as Susan retires and CPP eventually enters the picture, the withdrawal strategy can then adjust. That doesn't mean this exact strategy would be right for everyone. It means Mark and Susan now have something much more useful than a retirement age pulled from a calculator. They have a timeline. They can see which income sources begin when, which accounts could fund each stage, where taxable income may increase and how to smooth it out, and how retiring at 60 compares to working another year or 2. That's the same $900,000, but a much more complete way of evaluating what that money actually needs to do. And this is why retirement planning gets difficult to do with one simple formula. Your CPP timing can shape your RRSP withdrawal strategy. That in turn can affect your OAS and your overall tax picture, ultimately changing how much you have available to spend. Then markets introduce another variable. Your spending can change. Tax rules can change. Nothing operates completely on its own. Regular monitoring and adjustments are an integral part of a complete wealth management strategy. So here's a shorter version you can start working through today. First, track your actual spending for 90 days and build some margin into that number. Then map out what CPP, OAS, and any pension could provide at the different ages you're considering. Next, count the years between your target retirement date and when your RRSP must mature. Under current rules, an RRSP has to mature by December 31st of the year in which you turn 71. When converted to a RRIF, minimum withdrawal requirements begin the following year. Those years before mandatory RRIF withdrawals can be important planning years. And finally, try to break your plan on purpose. Test retiring 2 years earlier, then 2 years later, and run a scenario where markets fall 20% during your first year of retirement. By the way, this what-if modeling is what's missed by so many people. Not protecting against sequence of returns risk is one of the biggest pitfalls of retirement. What changes? Does spending need to come down? Could CPP begin at a different time? Would working part-time temporarily make a meaningful difference? Do you have enough cash or other assets available that you aren't forced to sell investments after a major decline? The goal isn't to find a retirement plan where nothing ever goes wrong, because that plan just doesn't exist. The goal is to understand how much flexibility you have when reality looks different from the original projection. If you'd like to get a clearer picture of what your retirement could look like and how your investments, your tax, income, and other financial decisions fit together, click the link in the description to schedule the conversation. This is the kind of detailed retirement planning we help Canadians navigate every day. And if you're already working with an advisor but aren't receiving this level of personalized planning and ongoing advice, it may be worthwhile to explore what else is available. There's no obligation, just an opportunity to see whether our approach and the level of planning we provide are the right fit for you. If you're ready to gain some clarity around your next chapter, let's take the next step.